I've always been an early morning and late night jogger. There's something peaceful about empty streets and the quiet hum of distant traffic. One night, around 11 p.m., I decided to take my usual route through the neighborhood park. The path was dimly lit, the occasional streetlight flickering above. I had my headphones in, music low enough to hear the world around me, when I first noticed someone ahead of me on the trail. At first I thought it was another jogger finishing up their run, but as I got closer, I noticed they weren't jogging. They were walking slowly, almost casually, with their head down. Their pace seemed deliberate, like they were waiting for me. I tried to tell myself it was just a coincidence, but my gut told me otherwise. I picked up my pace slightly, and so did they. Not running, not fast, but keeping pace, always just behind me. I turned off my headphones, my ears straining for every sound. The crunch of leaves under my shoes matched the crunch of their footsteps. I turned a corner in the path, hoping to lose them in the twists, but when I glanced back, they were still there, the dim light casting their shadow long and menacing across the trail. Panic started to set in. I thought about calling someone, but my phone was in my armband, tucked under my jacket. I slowed, pretending to stretch, hoping they would pass me. Instead, they stopped too, standing perfectly still, just watching. My heart raced. I could feel every hair on my neck standing on end. I sprinted. I don't think I've ever run that fast. My lungs burned, legs screaming, but I didn't dare stop. Behind me, I heard nothing at first, and I hoped I had lost them. But then, a voice, low and almost amused. "You can't run forever." My blood ran cold. It wasn't a whisper, it wasn't a shout, but it carried across the empty trail in a way that froze me in place for a second. I ducked behind a bush, trying to catch my breath, listening. Nothing. Silence. I waited, counting my heartbeats, trying to convince myself it was just my imagination. I finally risked a glance back and saw them at the edge of the trail, standing perfectly still, staring in my direction. I didn't wait any longer. I ran toward the main road, toward the streetlights and cars. When I finally reached a lit area with people around, they were gone. No trace, no sign they had even been there. My hands were shaking as I called a friend, explaining what had happened. They told me it was probably someone messing around, but I knew better. That night taught me that fear can be silent and patient, waiting for you to slip, to let your guard down. Even now, whenever I jog late at night, I check every shadow, every figure in the distance. I don't know who that person was or why they followed me, but I'll never forget the feeling of being watched, hunted, and powerless on a quiet trail where no one else could hear me. I moved into a new apartment complex about 6 months ago. It was an older building, a little run down, but affordable and close to work. Most of the tenants kept to themselves, which I liked, except for one neighbor. He lived directly across the hall from me, a quiet guy who never seemed to leave his apartment. At first, I thought nothing of it. Some people just keep to themselves, but things started to feel off after a few weeks. It started small. I'd be cooking dinner or watching TV, and I'd notice a shadow moving across his window, always when I was looking in that direction. I thought it was my imagination at first, until one night I was sitting at my desk working on my laptop, and I noticed him standing at the window, just staring. Not waving, not doing anything normal, just staring at my apartment. I froze. I couldn't tell if he had seen me notice him. My apartment was on the second floor and the windows were level with his. I didn't want to confront him yet, so I just pretended not to notice. That night, I locked all my doors and windows, double-checked the chain lock, and tried to convince myself it was nothing. But it didn't stop. Over the next few days, I noticed signs that he knew when I was home. Sometimes I'd come back from work and see the blinds move in his apartment before I even reached my door. Once, I left my keys in the lock for just a second while I fumbled with groceries, and when I looked up, he was standing in the hallway, peeking out from his apartment doorway. He didn't say anything, just stared. I started feeling uneasy, paranoid even. I changed my schedule, tried not to be predictable, but it seemed like he always knew. One night, I was taking out the trash late, around midnight, and saw him across the hall again, just standing, watching. My heart pounded. I told myself to stay calm, but every instinct screamed at me that he wasn't just a weird neighbor. The breaking point came one evening when I was brushing my teeth. I noticed movement in the bathroom mirror, not mine. I turned around slowly. Nothing. I laughed nervously at myself. But then I heard it. A soft knock at my apartment door. I froze. It was 11:30 p.m. I wasn't expecting anyone. I didn't answer. The knock came again, louder this time, and then a voice, low and calm. "I know you're awake." I nearly dropped the toothbrush. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to call attention to myself, but I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. The operator told me to stay put and not open the door. The knock stopped as suddenly as they started. I sat there shaking, listening to the faint hum of the hallway light. After a few minutes, I peeked out through the peephole. His apartment across the hall was dark, completely empty. The police came, searched the building, checked the stairwells and hallways, but found nothing. No forced entry, no footprints, nothing. They said it might have been someone messing with me, a prank, but I knew better. That night, I barely slept. I kept the lights on and stayed alert, glancing toward his apartment every few minutes. I eventually moved out a few weeks later. Before I left, I peeked across the hall one last time. His apartment had been empty for months, even before I moved in. No one lived there. And yet for weeks, I had felt watched, followed, and hunted. I still get chills thinking about it. Every time I enter a building, I check the windows, the stairwells, the hallway corners. I don't know who or what was behind that window, but I know I will never forget the feeling of eyes on me when no one should have been there. It was a Friday night, and I had stayed late at work finishing a project. The streets were almost empty when I finally left the office, around 11:45 p.m. I got into my car, tired but ready to head home, and started the familiar drive through the city. The roads were quiet, the glow of streetlights reflecting off wet asphalt from an earlier rain. It felt peaceful, at first. A few blocks down, I noticed headlights in my rearview mirror. I didn't think much of it. Probably just another car. But as I drove, the car stayed behind me. Not too close, not aggressive, just there. I glanced at the license plate in passing, trying to see if I recognized it. I didn't. And no matter how many turns I took, how fast I accelerated, the car matched my pace perfectly, never leaving, never approaching. I tried to calm myself. Maybe they were going my way. Maybe it was coincidence. But as the miles passed, my stomach twisted. The same car had been behind me for nearly 20 minutes, and I couldn't shake the feeling that it was deliberate. My phone was in the passenger seat, but I hesitated to call anyone. I didn't want to attract attention, didn't want to provoke whoever it was. I decided to pull into a well-lit gas station to see if they would drive past. As I turned the corner, my headlights illuminated the empty pumps, the convenience store dark and closed. I stopped, heart pounding, and glanced in my mirror. The car followed me into the lot and parked across from me, about 20 feet away. The engine was off. The headlights remained on. I sat in my car, trying to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe someone just needed directions. But instinctively I knew better. Something about the silence of the car, the way it stayed perfectly still, was unnerving. I unlocked my door, grabbed the largest wrench I could find from the trunk, and kept my eyes on the vehicle. No one emerged, just the car, parked, engine off, lights on, waiting. I faked a phone call, speaking loudly to an imaginary friend, hoping whoever was in the car would get the message that I wasn't alone. I inched forward slowly, pretending to leave. The car did the same, moving exactly with me, matching every turn, every brake. My hands shook on the steering wheel. This was no coincidence. Finally, I decided to take the long way home, a route with more traffic and streetlights, hoping to lose them.
But every turn I took, the car mirrored me, never speeding up, never lagging behind. Panic set in fully. I considered pulling over, confronting them, but I couldn't bring myself to leave the safety of my vehicle. After what felt like hours, but was probably 20 minutes, I saw a police car parked at a distant intersection. I signaled, flashing my lights wildly. The car behind me didn't move. I drove past the police, and when I looked back in my rearview mirror, the car was gone, vanished into the night like it had never been there. I arrived home safely, but I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the house, every shadow made me tense. The next morning, I checked the traffic cameras along my route. There was no car matching the description, nothing. It was as if it had appeared out of nowhere, followed me, and then disappeared entirely. Weeks later, I shared the story with a coworker. He mentioned a similar incident had happened to someone else on my route around the same time. The details matched almost exactly. Late-night drive, same empty streets, the same silent car that followed without making a sound. I don't know if it was the same person or a series of coincidences, but it didn't make me feel better. I still drive that route at night, but I never do it alone anymore. I park near friends' houses, take well-lit streets, and always keep my phone in hand. I've considered it could have been a stalker, a prank, or even something more sinister. But I'll never know. That car, silent, waiting, following, is a memory that haunts me every time I drive at night. Even now, when I see headlights in my rearview mirror late at night, my heart races. I glance around, checking for escape routes, trying to reassure myself it's just another driver. But deep down I know that silent car, and if it ever came back, I wouldn't be ready.
Like and subscribe.